December the 4th, 2024, and we are doing Cashflow Crunch today. And my purpose with these sessions is really to break down the numbers and make sense of all of the great opportunities coming our way. And so we are going to be looking at a 9-unit, and if we have time, a 16-unit retirement home that could be used for co-sharing. Okay, now before I get into that, Cherie, you're going to be presenting something and some ideas with us.
Okay. So Liza had asked me to do a little talk about just which realtor is the right one, because she'd been getting some conversations from the membership about not sure, which realtor to use. Are they transaction based, etc. So I thought I'd do just a little quick thing here about that. And then, she'll have it recorded for later reference. So anyway, so I started out. So yeah, the presentation is which realtor is the right one, because they are not all created equal in a lot of cases. But anyway, so let's see. So we're going to start with, there's different kinds of realtors. So I just have to click OK for being transcribed. So the residential realtor is, they can be divided into multiple things as well. But a residential realtor is someone who is usually looking at 4 units or less. So it could be a fourplex, could be a duplex, could be strata, any number of things. So the things to ask a realtor, you should always kind of interview your realtor or couple or 3 or whatever. I have found that the best way to find a realtor is ask for referrals from people you know. Who have they used? Was it a good experience or not? So residential realtors can be first-time homebuyer focused, which isn't necessarily investor focused. They can be investor focused. And really that's kind of what you're looking for if you're in the investment arena. They can be relocation focused. In other words, their primary business is for people moving from one location to another. And they can also be a renovation or flip focused as well, where that's predominantly the bulk of their business. So you want to kind of find out, yeah, you've got a sign out there that says you're a realtor or whatever, and I met you and you sound great, but what is your practice? Who are the types of clients they're looking for? What are the types of transactions do they deal with? So someone who focuses on first-time home buyers are not really going to be versed in, as an investor-focused realtor, it's sort of like, what is your long-range plan? How many properties do you want? Who is the team that you have? How are you structuring your financing for these deals? Very different than dealing with the first-time home buyer. And so you need to know that. If you are dealing in another province, so let's say you reside in BC, but you're looking at properties in Alberta, you don't want to be dealing with a BC realtor. You want an Alberta realtor. You want a realtor that understands the location you're looking at and that particular market, because they differ all the time. So it's very important that you really look at what are they doing and what is their focus. So other than residential realtors, there are commercial realtors, and they are very different people. So a commercial realtor is someone who can deal with leasing, which means that they lease office space or they lease apartment buildings. They can do all of that. They do leasing, not sales. There are some commercial realtors that don't do sales. They only do leasing. They can do office sales. They can do retail, retail spaces. And they can do multifamily. And multifamily, for purposes of being called commercial, is usually 5 units or more. right? So if you have a fourplex, you can deal with a residential person or someone who's experienced in that. It's just basic financing. But when you are dealing with 5 units or more, you move out of the realm of residential to commercial lending. And so you need to make sure that the realtor understands the difference of commercial lending and residential lending. So, for example, there's no difference in licensing for realtors. You're a licensed realtor. There's no different licensing for being a commercial realtor or being a residential. You're a licensed realtor, period. And it depends on what you focus on and where your area of expertise is. Also, commercial realtors do a lot of development or land assembly. So that's the other area that you will find a commercial realtor specializes in. And again, you want to find out who are they looking for? Who are the clients they deal with? Sometimes they only want to deal with the big players. They don't want the small players. And depending on where you are, you want to make sure you get a realtor that actually takes your interests at heart and wants to work with you, for you, and is fine with whatever that looks like time-wise. Isn't going to be going, well, you don't really know what you want. You want someone that's going to focus on the long-term relationship. Because when you are an investor, sometimes you might be looking for one thing and it evolves, or, you might write offers and crash them. Like, the realtor needs to understand, right, that this could be a process that lasts longer than, a year or 2, sometimes working with someone. So you need to make sure that the realtor is aware of that. If you start getting pressure for, well, what's your timeline? And they don't really feel like they want to take the time if you're not going to buy something after you show them a few places, right? Then they're interested just on the transaction of that time. They're not interested in building a relationship with you, because as an investor, you can be a multi-purchaser or seller. It's a relationship where they're going to use you a lot over the course of time. So you want to make sure that that the realtor understands that and is willing to do that, and that is somebody that you want to work with. Sometimes I get people who say to me they're an investor and, been working with me, and all of a sudden they'll say, well, my niece just got her license and I want to help her out. And that's fine. And I understand that. But do they really know what it is that you need? And do they have the skills at this point in their career to really assist you in that? I think that that's important. I will take questions. If anybody has questions, just let me know. When you are looking for a realtor, you also need to ask questions, right? You need to find out, number one, do they even own their own home? You'd be amazed how many realtors don't own a piece of real estate. Tons of them, right? Do you own rental property? Why is that important if you are an investor? Why would that be important? It's important because if they own rental properties, they have experience themselves personally. You have experience in what is it like to be a landlord? What is it like to deal with property managers? How do you really assess the numbers? What numbers do you need to know? Or what can you expect? If you go to look at this rental property and you want to do a renovation, what is approximate are you looking at? What will this, I get asked all the time, what would this unit rent for? And you need to know that they know. And by owning their own rental properties, it keeps them in the loop with what it means to have a rental property. The residential tenancy branch, they can give you a lot better advice on a lot of things associated with that if they have owned and experienced being a landlord. Another question, if you're looking for development or potential land assembly, do they have experience in that? Are they able to say, yeah, this is a great street because in 10 years, this will all be, picked up by developers and it won't even look the same? Or, that sort of thing. Do they know what's going on in the area you're looking at? Are you buying in the path of development or not? Other things is to ask the realtor, do you have a good team? Especially if you don't actually live where you're looking to buy. Does that realtor have a good team of inspectors, mortgage brokers, lawyers, appraisers, contractors, tradespeople that you may need in that area that you're looking in? They should be your center of resource of where they can contact people to get you what you need. And if they do have a good team and they start throwing out all these names, have you used them? What's been your experience with them? You can ask a realtor that. Because you know how it normally goes in the normal business world right now is if a realtor, this is what realtors are trained to do, right? If someone asks you for an inspector, you can't recommend one. You have to give them three names. And then they're supposed to look at all those three names and figure it out themselves, because the realtor has to protect themselves in case they give bad advice or a bad recommendation. Do you have a good mortgage broker? Blah, blah, blah. And it's sort of the same thing. You're supposed to give three names. And I, in all honesty, I very seldom do, unless I don't have a relationship with the person. If it's someone that I've never met, never worked with, I might give them three because I don't really know you well enough. But once I get to know a person, I recommend the mortgage broker that I feel would work with them the best, right? And, I have some people who are comfortable dealing with a mortgage broker in Vancouver when they might be buying in Alberta. Because unlike realtors, you may not know this, but unlike realtors, mortgage brokers are licensed federally. They can fund a mortgage in any province, where realtors, we are licensed only within one particular province, unless you specifically have taken the test and want to work in other provinces. But really, with the real estate market, you need to know what's happening in there all the time. I'm just going to check the chat in case there's a question. Oh, yes, they're licensed provincially too. But what I'm meaning is that a lot of them, you can go to someone in BC and buy a property in Alberta, right, Jen? Yeah. So, they're not restricted by the province borders that we are. So that's really important there. But it's like, appraisers, contractors, appraisers, I get asked, and I'm always like, well, what kind of appraisal are you looking for? Is it a financing appraisal? Is it a market appraisal? Is it a commercial appraisal? Because they're all different, and I would recommend different people depending on what you're looking for. So having a good team, have you used their services, are really good questions to actually ask the realtor, so you know what your sphere of resources are. The other thing is that your realtor needs to be willing to talk with your mortgage broker if they want, if you're comfortable with that, with the inspector, with the lawyer, because lots of times we need to know all those little pieces to make sure the deal is coming together and we can meet the deadlines that you have and everything else, because it's sort of like, if you keep everybody separate and nobody knows what's going on, you're not going to get very good advice. You're going to get piece by piece advice, and nobody's getting the whole picture. And I would encourage you to use your realtor as that person that's the coordinator of the whole picture and can advise you that way. And they do exist. And, we have a network of realtors who I know who work in the investment field in multiple provinces and cities and towns and everything else, where we can find someone if you're having trouble locating who that person is in the area that you're looking for.
I'm curious to ask Cherie, why is it important to ask if your realtor has their own home?
Because part of that is because it's going through the process of owning property. Owning property is very different than being a renter. Now, if they say, no, I don't own my own home, but I have 4 revenue properties, I would say, yeah, you've got a fair amount of experience. But number one, if they've never, do they own their home now? Have they ever owned a home? Right? Because it's sort of like, you don't like going to the dentist whose teeth are rotting, right? It's that same sort of principle. However, if they do conversely own a lot of rental properties, they might work for you. And it might be that they're doing some of the stuff like in Rich Dad Poor Dad, where you don't own your own home, but it's better to own revenue property and not own your own home.
Yeah,
But
yeah, that's what I was getting at because I don't own
yeah,
the home that I'm in, right? It's a
yeah,
family home, but it's not
yeah,
mine, right? And
yeah.
yet I've got 100 doors across Canada, so it's like,
Exactly. So it would still qualify. It's just a starting point. Do you own your own home? It doesn't have to be, but it gives you information. Like sometimes people just don't even think to ask. Have you ever owned a property? Do you have rental property then if you don't have yours? If they don't have rental property and they don't own their own home, do they not believe in owning? Some people do not believe that owning property is a good thing. So it's just one of those things. It's a starter of question. It's a starter of a conversation. Yeah. But it's not like, oh, if they don't own their own home, they don't know what they're doing. They might, depending on what else they have done.
so now I know a lot of the individuals who are part of the membership, they invest outside of BC. So
Yes.
just a clarification point, in other provinces, residential agents are not allowed to do commercial. So like in Alberta or in Ontario, you actually have to have a separate.
Yes, you have to have a separate license. So yeah, so you need to know who you want. You need someone who specializes in what it is you're looking for. So yes. And the other thing to understand about commercial realtors, if you go to a larger firm like a Wakefield Cushman or Colliers or one of those, right? They don't generally deal with MLS, right? They all have their own little Rolodexes, developers, whatever, depending on what you're looking for. They will deal with any commercial realtor. Whoever brings them the deal is what they buy, right? And then they'll decide who they want to sell with when the time comes. So they operate their businesses very different from residential, whether that's BC, Alberta, whatever. Commercial realtors operate very differently on almost any level you can think of in the process.
I don't want to hog the stage with you, Cherie, by asking you all the questions. So if anybody else has any questions, hop right in. Otherwise, I will ask my next question. I love it when I have access to an experienced real estate agent because I'm just like, okay, I've got all these issues and I need
to no, that's what it's about. So, we've got time, and questions are usually the best thing. And even if you're asking most of the questions, it's okay, because sometimes those are questions other people have, they just haven't asked them yet.
So the one question I have for you as well is, if you're working with an agent and they've shown you a couple of places already, and then they get to the point where they're sort of like, okay, Huong, I've shown you enough places, you need to make a decision. And you've already signed that agreement to only work with them for a certain
a buyer's agency agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
What recommendations do you have for somebody who's in that position where they've already signed this agreement and they've only just looked at a handful of properties with this agent, and this agent's now saying you need to make a decision?
Hire the agent.
I would say the difficulty is this, right? My initial reaction is you didn't have a conversation at the beginning of the relationship. So at the beginning, before you even went to look at the first property, you should have had a discussion with them about timeline, how you work, especially in your case, you're an experienced investor. This is how things go. I want to look at properties, but I take a long time, right? Or I don't make decisions quickly. It may be a year before you write an offer. Do you want to take me on? Yes or no? right? Those need to be done at the beginning before you ever sign an agency agreement. You need to have those answers, because you shouldn't be having someone all of a sudden pressuring you when it's like, oh, don't you remember we had this conversation? And no, I'm not ready to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Angie has, just take your mic or yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of thinking about this just because like I'm a little bit prone to like avoid conflict, so I have to push myself. And I think I have learned a lesson where I should have been like, okay, you know what? I don't want to, move forward with this realtor. And instead I was feeling like, oh, he's done so much for me and I probably owe him. And, that really cost me. So I feel like at any point, are we not allowed just to kind of fire somebody?
Well, it depends on, technically, yes. I mean, my process is whether somebody signed a listing agreement with me and then they decide they don't like how I'm doing it or hasn't sold or whatever. I'm not going to hold them to the 6-month contract they've signed with me if after 2 months they want out, because my belief is I don't want to work with someone who doesn't want to work with me. How is that going to work out well for anybody, right? But there are realtors out there, trust me, there are realtors out there who it's like, you've signed this contract, I'm not, you're committed, right? So before you sign anything that commits you, like a buyer's agency agreement that says, you're gonna, if you look or buy anything in the next 3 months, it has to be with me, or else you're gonna have to pay me the commission anyway. So before you go signing those things, you need to sort of have a bit of an idea. And there's nothing wrong. All you're doing, you don't like confrontation. It's not really confrontation. It's just simply asking a question. If they're saying, I want you to sign this agreement, okay, what does it say? Make sure you read it, right? In today's world where everything comes through on just just click here and everything's signed. Do you know how many people have bought properties and they haven't even read the contract they signed? A legal contract you're bound to for like over $1 million and you haven't read it?
Yeah.
That's blind trust in my mind, right? It's like, oh, goodness, okay. But all you're doing is wanting to ask a question. Okay, I've read this. Can you explain to me what this means? Oh, what happens if 2 months in something goes wrong and I don't like you anymore or you don't like me? What do we do? Can I get out of this contract? Will you cancel the contract for me? There's just a simple question and they'll either say yes or no. But those are things that you need to discuss before you start signing stuff. Right.
One of the things I've done before, Angie, is that I've made that contract specific for the property that we're actually about to go and see. So then I'm not just tied to that agent for a length of time. It's only for that property. So if I decide not to proceed with that property, then I don't have I don't have a working contract with that agent for any of
you don't have an obligation.
Yeah. So that's one way to get around it if the agent's insisting that you sign something with them.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. There's lots of things you just know, okay, I had a bad experience, so I'm just wanting this. Most realtors generally are quite accommodating.
Yeah. I've had a lot of real estate agents tell me, Huong, I won't work with you because you're an investor.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's fine.
Because that's not their focus. That's not what they want to do. Right. They want to help people buy houses where they go, oh, this is so pretty. Yeah.
Right. Because they know that I'll look at 100 properties before I find something that I will buy. Yeah. So they, which is totally fine. And I actually appreciate agents like that who are very upfront about it, saying, Huong, I'll only work with sellers or I'll only work with non-investors. Because then I know those aren't the agents for me, right? And I can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, why do you think there's so many real estate agents? It's not a one shoe fits all, right? It's you need to. There's a real estate agent for everybody out there that fits into your what you're looking for and what you want to find and your personality and how you do things. But, there are a lot of agents out there, and I think now we're in a little bit of a different market, or at least we are here in BC. We're moving from the seller's market. We're currently in a balanced market, and we're moving towards the buyer's market. And when that happens, and it's been a slow time, there are a lot of realtors out there that are what we call hungry. And some of them, it's very real. Like they did, one deal all year. You can't live on that, right? So there's a lot of realtors that are going to be feeling hungry now, and in 2025, they're going to be hungry. And so what happens when people are hungry? They get a little bit more aggressive, determined. They may be like, well, I need you to make a decision now because I need a deal, or I'm not paying my mortgage payment this month or something. And it's sad, but it's true. And so, that becomes a very real thing. So if realtors start to become a little bit more aggressive, that's usually why. Or they're going, well, I don't want to waste my time. I need to focus on people who will do a deal in the next 2 months because I have to eat, sort of thing.
You reminded me about a question, and this is around investors that I've heard of who will only work with agents who give them a kickback.
Yeah. And I'm not one of them. Because I earn my money, I tell you. Yeah, and some investors, like I said, they're, I'm not every investor's realtor. Can't be, because I have different things. I believe that I'm worth what I am, and I don't ask for kickbacks from my dentist. I don't ask for kickbacks from, other service providers. Why would I ask a kickback on the realtor? Only unless I didn't think the realtor was earning their pay, which then makes me question your choice of a realtor if you don't think they're doing a good job, that they're not earning their money. I have investors, these are my kinds of clients that are like, Cherie, like you earn your money. I'm happy to pay you all day long, right? It's like, I have clients where we've done 10, 12, 15 deals. They've never asked me for a reduction because it's about, do you do a job or do you provide service that they value? And I think that's the important thing. But yeah, if getting a kickback is really important to you, then you want to find a realtor that's willing to do a kickback.
Because I'm hearing a lot of investors who will ask for kickbacks from real estate agents, from mortgage agents, like everywhere possible.
It's like they don't want to pay for anything, except if the shoe's on the other foot, look out, right? Usually that's the way it goes. They want to take a kickback from everybody, but they don't necessarily give the same way. They don't feel the same way about what they do.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I pay, people complain about lawyers, for example. Oh, my lawyer charged me this much money to do a JV agreement or to register a mortgage or whatever. Like, oh my God. And it's like, you know what? How many times have you been in court? My lawyer, I pay my lawyer, and I'm happy to pay my lawyer because his job is to keep me out of court. My mortgage broker, they earn their money because they usually get me a deal when I need something done fast. Oh, hi, guess what? I just bought a property and I need a mortgage in 2 weeks, right? Or, oh, I make them run through their hoops, but I don't regret what they pay or what I pay them, because there are times when they've pulled rabbits out of the hat for me. For God's sake, like, why am I going, you've treated me so well and you've saved my butt in so many ways, but can you please give me back some of the money you just made? Because I need it more than you do, right? Like, I just think that's a crappy attitude. So I believe if they aren't worth what you're paying them, then you need to find another service provider.
So Cherie and I can talk about real estate all day long, you guys. So you guys either need
Yes.
to jump in with your questions or comments,
Are
or
you going, oh my God, Cherie, like, how can you say that? Yeah, it's
no,
okay.
no, all of those comments are that mindset thinking is really important, because as you acquire more properties and as you work with more individuals in the industry, you're going to find that there's different ways of approaching um,
Yeah.
the opportunities, and you want to build your team so that you know the team that you're going to be working with is really strong, right? And part of that is making sure that your team is well paid.
I have a comment.
Sure, Jen.
Yeah, so I come across this as well from time to time, less so these days than I used to, but people wanting to kind of get something from me. And the way that I outline it to them is this is a business and it needs to be treated like a business. And this is the cost of doing business. You have to pay for the services that are making this all come together, because there's going to be a great return on that investment. It's worth it. You're getting these properties, you're building your investment portfolio. It doesn't come for free. And so when we talk about those kickbacks or those deals or complaints about the way that how much everything costs, I just try and reframe it for them that, think about the big picture and how much you're going to get out of this, rather than focusing on what it costs. This is an investment.
Yeah. Thanks, Jen. That's very good advice.
All right, so let's move on to the analysis portion. So Cherie, thank you so much. I hope that gives you enough time to run.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll have to leave in about 5 minutes. So I'm on the way to pick up grandchildren and my son and daughter-in-law who are coming from Australia. So
that's so amazing.
Yeah.
What a great way to start the holidays.
I know. I'm very happy. So go ahead, take it away.
All right. So on the screen, you guys should see a report for Wilby Residences. This is a retirement home. The address is there. 19. Now, is this big enough for everybody to see? Yeah,
it's good for me.
Andy's shaking her head. Okay, I'll make it a little bit bigger. How about that? And I will move this screen out of the way. So this is 1909 Charles Street in Vancouver. The purchase price is there. Hi, Darlene. I see you're coming on. That's great. It's a beautiful looking house, recently just built. And let's see here. It's 9 units plus a caretaker suite. These 9 units are assisted living. It's just a room. So it's not like a bachelor or 1 bedroom. It's just a room with or without a bathroom. I'm not sure, but there's no kitchen in any of the rooms. Okay. 4 stories. Total square footage is 2,300. It's just built and it's zoned for seniors housing. So I was asked to run the numbers with the group tonight to see whether or not this would make a good conversion for co-sharing, co-living, even though it's zoned for a retirement home. Okay, so this is the information here. So if anybody wants this information, I'm happy to send it out afterwards. So 9 units, the bachelor's 350 square foot per room. They just literally finished building it. So last year the taxes were $8,600, and then here's the photos here. Yeah, and it's a corner lot as well, so it's a very nice lot. Okay, and then just the map there. All right. Any comments or questions before I bring up the Excel sheet and we will run through the analysis together on this one? Is anybody excited to see how this is going to turn out? I am. Yeah.
I would ask, just if there's people who aren't familiar with Vancouver, is that a good area?
I was just going to kind of pipe in because I have a friend who lives on Woodland and Broadview. And so you have a SkyTrain station that's really close. I mean, commercial area that is very busy, but I think I saw it's kind of close to, yeah, that would be, I mean, you might want to help me out here because now the map is gone.
Yeah,
But yeah, Grandview Woodland, and it's close to, yeah, I mean, I think that's, I like that area. I mean, it's not like, oh, wow, I'm going to brag to everybody that I live there. But I think that is pretty reasonable for Vancouver. Cherie's staring off into space, I think. Are you
Yeah.
thinking?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a great area or not. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, it was just a question because I didn't know how many people were familiar with Vancouver. That's all.
It's decent. East Van. It's gonna have lots of breweries around it. Gonna have some hipsters. It's gonna have some, I don't know. I think there's the bike path. Oh no, the bike path is like 10 blocks up, but it's like a decent little area. Nothing special. Nothing bad.
Yeah, but it's not, I was thinking it was closer to the SkyTrain, and it's not. So I should
No,
correct
because it's
that.
first in
Right?
Nanaimo.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's some good soccer pitches around there. I used to play soccer there all the time around that area, but and it's just really residential, like regular East Van.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have a winter ale. Like it's drink time, and then I have to get back to work after this. It's gonna suck.
All right. So on your screen, you'll see the Excel sheet. So let me make it a little bit bigger here. Okay, so this is the Excel sheet that I like to use to do my analysis. This is Don Campbell's Excel sheet that I've inherited from my years. So the address, the purchase price, 4.295. And I've just lumped it in as, let's see here, 27 times 9 units was what I was told to use as the rental for rooms. I don't know, 2,700 seems a lot per month to be charging an elderly person, but that's what I was asked to use.
Well, if there's a nurse that comes in and helps them, then like a lot of nursing homes charge like 3,400 to $4,000 a month per. So I don't know like how much assisted this living is, but like,
Yeah. My uncle just got relocated because the home that he was in, it was really nice, but they were paying, I think, 7,000 per month for him. And I've heard of people paying 9,000 per month. But I mean, depending on what the provisionings are and whether or not somebody has government funding, like there's a lot of factors that go in. So I
then
can't
maybe
say anything clear.
2,700 is reasonable then. Right? Okay, so I've just put in 2,700 times 9, so that gives us 24,300 for a month. So over the course of the year, we're looking at $291,000 as income, rental income. Now, because this is a brand new unit, there was no numbers that came with it except for the 8,600 that came in that report. But I don't know if this is the new taxes based on it being a retirement home. I don't know what the hydro, electricity, water would be, and I have no idea what the insurance would be. I took a guess and bumped up the property management to 20, and I bumped up the vacancy to 8. Does anybody want me to make any changes to these numbers? Because at this point, we're just pulling numbers from the sky here.
I do wonder, I mean, because you're looking at converting it, but if it were to be for, like, you know, people who needed assistance who are older, and would they qualify for government assistance in their payments? I don't know if I can overcomplicate things, but that's a thing that I wonder about.
Yeah. So
you're talking about converting it anyways, though.
Yeah, so when I do my analysis on any opportunity, I'll run it based on the current situation.
Okay.
So assuming that we operate it as a retirement home. And then I will run it with all the different exit strategies or all the different scenarios. Because if for some reason, if you can't do co-sharing living on this, then you have to run it as a retirement home. Right. So I would want to make sure that it can function, like that it can cash flow and it's a good opportunity based on its current usage, and then run it as well with the co-sharing opportunity. And if you're asking about, is there government funding for co-sharing?
No, of course not, but for elderly folks and getting assistance.
Yeah, there would be, yes.
Interesting.
So the heating would probably be a lot more. It wouldn't just be, so like electricity and heat would be 200, which to me seems really low, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just bump one of those up to 300. So now we're $400 a month. Okay. The water, 100. I'm going to bump that up to 200. The taxes, insurance, like 5,000. I'm not sure, right? The repairs, because it's brand new, there probably won't be a ton of repairs. And then I've got 5% for other.
With property management, is it so high just because it's a multi-unit building?
No, so I'm accounting for more work because of it being seniors there. And so we're going to need to have like a lot more upkeep on the place, like yard work, pest control, and then probably a lot more advertising. Yeah. And also because when I've done cottage rentals, because of it being such a niche market, the property managers were charging me 15 to 18% already. Right. So if, and that's one of the things with the analysis is that you sort of want to overestimate if you don't know the numbers yet, and then go back and fix it once you can find a property manager that's willing to help you operate an assisted living building at 10%, then go back and, then you're laughing at the numbers. So Darlene, please feel free to jump in, and if I'm saying anything that's not resonating with you, just pipe in, okay? All right. So with all those numbers, we're operating with an expense ratio of about 11,000. So the expense ratio here is 45. This would be on the high end for a brand new building. But because this is assisted living, I would actually say maybe this is on the lower end, because we may need a staff member that's 24 hours available, right? So if we needed a staff person, then this property management line, I would actually add in a salary line and bump that up. Like when I do my hotel opportunities, we're looking at like 70% with expenses, which is insane, right? So if there is a staff member that's needed year round, like daily there, or even like a night rest person, right? Then there may be some additional costs in this 45% that we're not accounting for. Okay, so we get into the exciting part about the down payment. So 20% would be like 25% would be the starting point for a multifamily. If you're operating this as a business, I would bump this up to 35 to 40% automatically because of the financing that would go into that. Okay, so that means the down payment that you would need would be about 1.7 if you were to offer them the full price. The 4%, I would probably run this at 5.5 because you're going to be getting a commercial mortgage, not a residential mortgage or like a multifamily mortgage. Your rates are going to be higher. So I would be happy with 5.5 if I could get that, right? So usually those would be a little bit higher. So Jen, jump in if I'm saying anything that's not right here.
Yeah, I mean, in today's market, it might actually be a little bit higher than that.
Yeah.
Closer to 6, maybe.
Okay, let's do that. Yeah, on one of my commercial properties, we got it, I think, at 6.5, right? And we were actually really happy with that. So, okay, so at 6% there. So just based on 40% down payment, a 6% interest rate, we are negative cash flow at $2,100 a month.
Yeah, and then I'm sorry, I'm just kind of blurting things out here, but I'm just thinking like if it really is just a room for each person and they really are in need of assistance, wouldn't there be need for like a chef and some cleanup and then a nurse 24/7?
Well, I'll jump in there if you want. One of the things you have to decide is that you can't mix the building. It's either seniors who are mobile, some of them can pay on their own. When you start getting into having to have a licensed facility, then your expenses just went crazy because there's certain regulations that, you know, they need their meals. If you're just providing, so there's different levels. So in other words, everybody has to be more or less at the same level. Everybody's mobile. They just need a little bit of guidance. They just need, you know, someone to help cook a meal. Great. So the level of service will dictate also to the price that you're providing. So the 2,700 is kind of people just, you know, they're still mobile. They just need a little bit of help. Then, you know, you don't have big salary. When you start getting into other categories, then you're into a whole different ball game. You're charging more. And then you need to know if that's the case, it needs to be licensed. So then you're into another category. So it's kind of like start at the beginning, look at the numbers based on people that way. Don't go to the extreme at this point, because that's another situation altogether. Just my 3 cents worth.
So then with the 2,700, that would be with clients who are mobile with very little help needed.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So then based on that, you know, then maybe the 45% expense ratio is reasonable, or should it be higher than that?
No, because then if they're mobile, they're able to be on their own. Maybe it's just a little guidance, so then you don't need as much, right? When you start getting into another category, then yes, the rent has to go up, and then you got to start adding more expenses to it, right? So that's kind of where that goes.
Is there a range for the expense ratio that we should keep in mind when we're running just the base scenario?
The rent the expenses will have to be in line with the rent that you're charging with the service, right? So in this case here, if it's not licensed, people just on their own, it won't be government funding. Usually government funding is only when you have it licensed and you're into another category. So these would be seniors who obviously have a pension, right? And kind of before they get to what we call, you know, more into the living part. So that's what dictates the expense ratio afterwards, right? Because it's going to cost, no matter what you do with the business, right? The building, it costs so much. Then it's the extras that you would be looking at would be what services are you providing to them. That's what would get added on. So,
got it.
Is that a little clearer? Yeah.
That's a little clearer.
Okay.
So in this scenario, just the base scenario, we would be losing $2,100 a month just from this one. So now let's run the scenario saying, okay, well, let's do the room share or the co-sharing. Okay. So this is the exact same sheet, but I've just duplicated it. So let's go in here and I'm gonna, so it's a room share now. So the address, the purchase price. So we still have 9 units and we're still going to charge, I don't know, do you think as a co-sharing ownership that we could still be charging everybody $2,700 for their room?
To make the numbers work, you'd have to go higher.
Yeah, I think 1-bedroom apartments are, well, depending on where you're looking, but around but that includes a bathroom and a kitchen so I mean, that'd be pretty high. Unless there's a gorgeous kitchen and everybody has California closets, ooh.
Yeah, that's okay. So let's put in the 3,500 and see where the numbers land, because some of the expenses are going to change as well, because we're not, yeah, so we'll probably have 10% for property management. Let's just say vacancy should be 0 at that point because we're all just living there as co-owners. The others would still be there. The repairs would still be there. The taxes was 9,000, so we'll put that back down. Okay. And then here we would be able to potentially do 25%, let's say. Now, because of the number of people, it wouldn't be treated as a residential mortgage. I think it would be treated as a commercial mortgage at this point, right? We might be able to go through CMHC, maybe. Okay, so maybe 4.25%.
Like as an insured?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So then, and here we're basing it on 360 amortization. So, you know, we could improve that quite a bit. So based on that, we would be cash flowing 7,400. But that's because we're charging 3,500 in rent for 9 units, right?
If it's co-housing, do you still need the property manager fee?
I'm just going to change the rent to 1,500 there. It depends on the structure of the co-housing, because if there's no money set aside for it and then nobody does it,
right?
So it's almost better to set aside that as a reserve or a buffer money, and then if nobody does it, then just go hire somebody.
Yeah,
Okay.
there needs to be a maintenance person for sure. There's always something that will go awry.
So now, you know, we may not need that 10%, right? Because if we're self-managing, then we may be okay with 5%.
Correct, because it's more maintenance than anything else than the management part.
Exactly. So we could put that down to 5% now, and then if the rents, so let's say 9 people came in and said, okay, we're going to buy this building for 4.3, and then on top of that, we're each going to pay 1,500 a month to help with the payments. We're now negative 6,000 a month.
Eek.
And sorry, what amortization were you using again?
25 years.
Now, if you do CMHC, wouldn't they allow you to do 40?
They may, yes. So I'll change that to 40.
Just to see if it makes any difference.
Yeah. Let's start 12. There we go. So going from the 25, 30 years to 40 years, and then I bumped up the rent to 2,000. So each person still has to pay 2,000 a month on top of putting their deposits down. We would still be negative cash flow $630 a month.
I just did a project on a building in Saskatoon for 1.150000. Who wants to move to Saskatoon? No one.
So Jen, you bring up a very good point. Like, you know, does it make sense to buy several units in Vancouver when this type of money can buy 2 or 3 buildings somewhere else?
And, you know, there's a lot to be said about Saskatoon. I know it sounds like a not ideal place when we're comparing it to somewhere like Vancouver, but, you know, we're at Mortgage Pals in the process of licensing in Saskatchewan and Manitoba because they are great places to invest right now.
Honestly, you can buy 3 buildings for the price of 1 or more.
Yeah.
Or more. It was ridiculous. The cash flow was ridiculous. Everything was amazing. I was like, I should buy this property right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So don't discount it.
Yeah. So,
And then if you come east, you can buy even more. Just saying.
right. Yeah. So that's the analysis with this one. If you run it with 40 years, I would caution you on doing it with more than the 30 years. Just keep that in mind that, okay, yes, if your project's only going to work at 40 years, you need to have another exit. Okay. And especially when, you've got 9 people coming in, they've got to put down, close to 120,000 each already for the down payment. And then they still got to pay $2,000 a month on top of that to have a 300 square foot unit.
I have a comment. Since we were looking at 9 units for senior housing and then 1 caretaker unit before, but now we're in a different scenario, so we don't we actually have 10 units?
Yep, good point. So we could put in that 1 special unit and maybe charge $3,000 for that one because it's its own self-contained unit.
In my personal opinion, I think that's still a little bit high for 1 room because they're not really units, right? Like it's just a room. And even if it's furnished, like fully furnished, then we need an expense line for furniture. But if it's not furnished, that's a lot. In my personal opinion, I think for that area of East Vancouver for 1 room that's not furnished to pay $3,000, I'm just not sure there will be many takers, but it is Vancouver, so probably there will be.
Yeah. Okay. So I adjusted it to 2,000 and we'll see. So at 2,000, we are now cash flowing $1,000. So having that 1 extra bedroom unit does help the situation.
Saskatoon, -32.
Hey, Saskatoon has a nice bridge.
There's nice things about Saskatoon for sure, not necessarily the weather.
Absolutely. My little brother and sister-in-law live there, so I go there sometimes.
Got a lot of great people.
Just not in the winter time.
Buddy. Okay. So now as a comparison, this property also came up. It's a 17 unit turnkey community housing opportunity. So it's basically a small little room for every individual, but 17 of them. It's in Victoria. And how much are they asking for this one? Is it up here or did I miss it already? They are not asking 4 million. They're asking 3.995. So about the same price as the Vancouver one, okay, a little bit less, but more rooms. So now you've got 16 rooms instead of 9. Okay. Now the interesting thing about this opportunity is that they're offering it on a lease instead of a straight buyout.
Is it a lease to own or just a lease to lease?
I think it's just a lease to lease. Okay. So it would be a similar analysis run through that we just did. Is there interest to run through it on this one? Or Darlene, do you have one out in your end of the country that you want to show something on? Because also I want to do a time check too.
Yeah, I don't have one ready at this moment, but they certainly would be much cheaper and price. We sometimes our weather out here is better than in the middle of the country too. Just throwing that out there.
Where are you located, Darlene?
I'm in Moncton, New Brunswick, so on the far east.
Fun. Oh my goodness, super fun. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I am stay on if anybody wants to run this analysis on the 17 unit one in Victoria. And we could do that quickly just to see where the numbers would fall in comparison to the 9-unit Vancouver one. Yeah, okay, we're good to keep going on this?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So let me go back to the Excel sheet. This one? Nope, not this one. Oh, I've lost my Excel sheet. There we go. All right, so this is the 18-unit, 16-unit one, so I'm going to get rid of that because I don't know what the address is. And we just came under, oh, I'm going to undo here. Let me undo. I'm going to go back here. So we're going to go just under the 4 million there. And it's 16 units. Okay. So at 16 units, we're at 43,000. And so if the lease is 34,000 a month, that gives us just about $9,000 in profit, just from the rental income. That wouldn't even be enough to cover the expenses. Right? So as a lease, I would say it probably wouldn't work, right? Unless we're way off on the expenses here somehow. Okay. So now if we're doing the 40% and our down payment is 1.6, we get a mortgage at 6% interest rate, and we're back to the 360 months here. We're cash flowing $10,000 a month. This is a way better opportunity in Victoria than in Vancouver.
But now it needs 17 investors, right? Not 9.
Yes. Unless you tell each person that instead of them coming in for 1 unit, they're coming in for 2 units. And so then their amounts would be, let me see here. So we'll calculate how much each person would need to come in at. Okay, so if we increase the amortization to 40 years, we make an extra 1,500. So number of investors.
For all of us, right? So divided by number of investors, exactly.
Divided by the number of investors, yes. So if we bring in 16 investors, which is quite high, each individual would need about 100,000. So I would say bring in 8 investors with 200,000 each. And then you just prorate the 100% ownership amongst the number of investors that come in based on their dollar value. So if somebody wants to come in with $500,000, they get a higher percentage.
True, but if we take the average, then the return on investment, I can't calculate it off the top of my head, but it's pretty low. Or
just on the cash flow?
On the deal, yeah. Again, for all of us, right? For like once you divide it per investor.
Yeah.
Saskatoon or Moncton?
You're still thinking yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said to be going to an area where the cost, the initial buy isn't as high. That's for sure.
I'm going to start looking in the States too, because there's going to be some smoking deals probably coming up if the economics mess up a little bit because of the new tariff situation. So eyes peeled, everybody, while it's ready.
And just to give you a ballpark, I did have a 20-bed facility that the value today would probably be, it was licensed with the government, would probably be about 1.5 million. Nice. So we kind of base it by, when you're getting into that rentals is so much per bed, right? 150,000 is high. At one time, it was only 75 per bed. So yes, and that was cash flowing. That was people not just having, that was having a staff and everything. So just the difference in the real estate part. So.
Now, with assisted living, do they calculate the value of the building based on NOI as similar to multifamily?
They do, but we kind of, the way they kind of calculate it is they use it. So usually in rentals, it's per unit. We do it like per bed. So this is the cost per bed based on, and if it's licensed, it's controlled. The amount is controlled by the government. You can only charge so much, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how the valuation, and that takes into account the value of the real estate at that time. So, an old building would be 75, a new building would be 150,000 per bed, right? So that's kind of it. That takes in the condition of the facilities, right? And yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see with assisted living and the seniors housing, if we convert it to co-sharing, how the value of the building would be adjusted at that point.
Probably the value of the building would not make much difference. Because you still got the square footage, it's a different use, but the value of the building itself is not really going to make a much difference. It's only worth so much whether you have a senior into it or you have somebody else into it, right? The difference is what you do with the operation part.
Right, but in multifamily though, if we improve the unit and can get an extra $50 across the board on all the units, the NOI's gone up, and so now the value of that building's gone up.
Right, but you'd have to do the renovations in order to get the value of the up, right? Same as an apartment building, right? If it's an older building, of course, then if you renovate it, then yes, the value goes up. Same thing with facility. It's an older facility. You make some improvements. Yes, it will increase some. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay. All right, well, thank you all of you guys for hanging in there. It's a little bit longer session this time. So there's the happy hour already happened, but we have the Christmas events coming up and at different locations all across Canada. So we've got one in Toronto and one in Victoria and also one in Vancouver. So Darlene, you're gonna have to get your gang going there, get something going.
I'll just party with some of my local friends then. Cheers.
Okay, so the one in Vancouver and the one in Victoria is also happening next Wednesday. And so I'm hoping that everybody can come. And yeah, in Toronto as well, it's also the same day. And we are doing a food drive. So if you are able to bring some food donations, please check the expiration date before you bring it. Okay, because I'm going to be hauling the Vancouver stash back to my house to give to the food bank. So we are doing a food drive run as well. So if you are coming, that would be fantastic. And if you could bring some food and bring a friend or two, that would be fantastic as well. All right, any last minute comments and stuff before we go?
Okay, thank you everyone.
Great job, Mary Ho Ho.